it will come as no surprise that the IMF's managing director does not support the restrictions on accessing foreign currency. They've been in place for a while now in Africa's biggest economy. While on a 4-day tour of the country, Lagarde repeated concerns that the fund repeatedly made last year in a speech to Nigerian legislators. The Central Bank of Nigeria introduced foreign exchange access curbs last year as part of efforts to preserve its foreign currency reserves, which currently stand at just about $30 billion. It has also marginally devalued the Naira following a steep decline in oil prices and in turn revenues to the government. Madame Lagarde urged Nigeria to broaden the tax base and make government spending a lot more efficient by improving compliance and enhancing revenue collection. She's also suggested an increase in the country's value-added tax, which at 5% is one of the lowest in the world. Right then, Sophia Dengo is live in Abuja tonight with more data on Madame Lagarde's tour of West Africa, starting, of course, in Nigeria. Sophia, thank you for your time. Madame Lagarde's speech to legislators urged them to consider a raise in VAT. How was that received?
Well, you know, Rama, I think President Muhammad Buhari said it best when he said that it's time for Nigerians and the Nigerian legislature and the economy to look inward. VAT, as you know, is a consumption tax, and if that is raised, it's really aligning with Madame Lagarde's advice to expand the economy inward by providing, you know, a broader tax base of which Nigeria's economy is able to pool more revenue as opposed to, you know, the constant dependency on oil prices on the international markets, which, as we know, since her visit, have just been completely low, lower than they have been ever in the past. Some have speculated that you know, sale of crude oil prices on the markets from, I don't know, 37 is likely to drop in 2016. So these are internal measures that, you know, of course, the reactions have been mixed from the consumer point of view. But of course, it is a complete, you know, shift in paradigm here in Nigeria concerning these kind of increase in taxes.
Indeed, debt management and customs are also areas of focus for the IMF chief. What sort of changes does a country need to make in those specific areas?
Well, I think, Rama, let's start with, you know, with Nigeria's debt. It's interesting to note that a country so oil-rich would actually have to watch the debt index. And Ms. Lagarde, Madame Lagarde's, you know, advice today when we were sitting in the room, you could literally see, is saying that Nigeria is teetering, especially with its economy, on making sure that the debt stays low, especially if there's been an expansion of capital expenditure of almost 3 times that it has been in the past. You know, 12% of GDP seems low, but she seems to insinuate that there is a slippery slope in which, you know, this 12% can increase if not watched very closely. In terms of customs, Nigeria is really an economic giant in Africa and spends a lot of money on importing a lot of goods. And it's within those importations that, you know, there must be certain limitations by indeed expanding the internal markets by providing farmers in the local grassroots areas markets within its country to be able to buy and sell and really raise the economy internally. Rama?
Indeed. Let's talk about technical assistance as well. The fund did mention that it can offer some sort of technical assistance to state governments to enable them to make better use of the smaller and smaller amounts of tax revenues that they have right now.
Well, you know, the good news here is that Nigeria is not asking for a loan, and Madame Lagarde has made that very clear that that is really not why she's here. What she's here to do is to fine-tune an economy and provide technocrats, especially what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of spending goes into not only a large population, but also different strata within the governance of the country. And these are the sort of loopholes that Madame Lagarde has said really weigh very heavily on Nigeria's economy outside of the extenuating circumstances that we've seen come to the fore internationally.
Indeed. Madame Lagarde also did, of course, focus on the 900-pound elephant in the room, so to speak, a more flexible exchange rate. Now, the CBN has been emphatic. It will not devalue the Naira anymore. But do legislators share those sentiments as well?
Well, it's been mixed feelings. You know, let's assume over the last 2 months, especially into the months of December and now into January, Nigerians really do not want to hear any more of the rhetoric of the economy not doing well. So legislators are committed to this sort of high-level, policy, physical changes. However, they're not going to be comfortable. Madame Lagarde has said that indeed Nigeria must exercise a certain level of, resolve and resilience and restraint in different areas. So if certain measures, especially when it comes to the exchange rate and the devaluing or the value of the Naira, you know that legislators are doing whatever it takes to make sure that the Naira stays strong on the markets and not seeing these volatile devaluation that we have seen, especially in the last few weeks. But overall, I must admit, Madame Lagarde really reiterated that Nigeria has made significant changes over the last 4 years since her last visit. And in order for Nigeria to continue sort of on an uphill trajectory, it must follow some of these minor internal changes, as well as the overall recognition that indeed times have changed and crude oil prices are no longer going to be the big revenue pool, but indeed the Nigerian economy must diversify in order to survive.
Indeed. One final question for you, Sophia. Madame Lagarde isn't just in Nigeria. She will be heading to Cameroon as well. What sort of issues will crop up in talks between the fund and the government over there?
Well, what's so interesting is, Nigeria has a completely massive footprint here in the West African states. So what affects Nigeria literally affects its surrounding neighbors. And whereas Nigeria is part of the economic community of West African states, Cameroon is part of what is known as a Central African Economic Monetary Community. And so Cameroon, along with this body, will be also gleaning from Madame Lagarde's advice and also, benefiting from having her technocrats and the Cameroonian authorities who are surrounding the areas of fiscal policy, as well as their finance ministers, are really taking close heed in order to make sure that their economies are protected, especially very early on in the year. Rama?
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for that. That's Sophia Dengo live in Abuja. Worth pointing out that in the next couple of weeks or so, Nigeria will be doing its article 4 consultations with the fund. It should be fascinating to read exactly what comes out of that.